General car sales are still declining. Many car companies had an underwhelming second quarter. Tesla had a great quarter. They have incredible demand. But today we are looking at the competition from Germany, especially because Herbert Diess left the VW group. To analyze the situation, I've invited the German Tesla specialist Alex VOIGT again to the podcast. So Alex, say hello to our audience and let's jump into it.
Hello everybody, great to be here again.
First of all, I want to ask, could you walk us through the situation with VW and what led up to Diess leaving VW?
So that's a question that probably will take an hour to be answered, and I don't want to talk an hour about it. But the short version is, over the 4 years, Herbert Diess was appointed CEO, group CEO. We've seen a few crises where the supervisory board was, there's been some rumors going around about him probably going to be kicked out. I even got this directly from some sources, and he survived them all. So, which is one of his skills. Over the years, he kind of fed up all stronger parties within the VW group, so that after 4 years, there was just simply nobody left who defended him. So it wasn't necessarily that everybody in the supervisory board, in the presidium, said he needs to go. It was more like over the years, they lost patience with him. It was too often that he said he's going to fix this, he's going to fix that, we're going to achieve this, we're going to achieve that, and it didn't happen. And I think there's, as always in life, although top managers never acknowledge that, there's also some personal issues that plays into it. Herbert Diess never really managed to get liking and respect within the entire VW group from all important stakeholders. And liking is one thing. You can still support someone which you don't like because he's performing very well. But that didn't happen with VW Group, and we probably can dig into a little bit deeper into that. So it accumulated over the 4 years. The issues accumulated, and then there was just only this one drop into the barrel that was missing. And that happened in the last supervisory board session, where the delays with the software group, with Cariad, boiled up to the extent that Audi, so CEO Duesmann, and Porsche, the CEO Blume, they said, dear friends, we can't stick to the timeline of Cariad and the delays anymore in terms of the operative system for the vehicles with our BEVs, because otherwise we have to delay very critical and important models. And that was kind of unacceptable for the supervisory board. Therefore, there was a split. The split that Porsche said, we have already developed our own solution, it's almost ready, and we can work with that. And I'm not sure with what Audi wants to work, what kind of version of software it's from Porsche or it's an old version from Cariad, I don't know. But they said the same in order to stick with their timeline. So that was the decision of the supervisory board, and everybody said, okay, crisis over, he survived again. But the next weekend, there was then, second thoughts coming over, mainly from the families, from the Porsche and, or Porsche, as the US guys would say, Porsche and Piech families, which is actually, most don't know, this are a few hundred people. So this is not just 2 families. It's 2 big families, which earn a fortune through VW. And they realized that this delays and all of that is just not a good setup for the future. And then the conversations started. And throughout that conversations, as I indicated, there was just nobody really defending Diess in terms of he's the right guy, he's doing the right thing, and he will save us all. And, without him, we can't succeed. That didn't happen. So there has been some critical negative voices, and there was nobody saying yes, but. And because of that, you had this conclusion of, well, yeah, I mean, if that's the situation, then we should probably make the switch now compared to waiting another 2 years, because the contract from Diess was going on until 2025. He managed to renegotiate it last year, which is now called from the supervisory board a big mistake, because you have to pay him the 2.2 million euros every year until 2025, and there's probably a bonus on top of that too. So it's a very strange situation.
Yeah, I was really struck when I heard the news, when the news broke, because what I liked about these, and we talked about that last time. You said you're a little bit more critical than I am about him a little bit, because you thought that he didn't deliver what he promises. He's a dreamer, more or less, that has a great vision, but doesn't have the skills to implement it in the VW group, which is also because the VW group is such a, like, almost a political system, like, so big, and you have to really do politics inside, like you said, like you have to have allies and people who really stick the head out for you a little bit to keep your place, and it's always a fight in the board who gains little edge over the other person. He identified the problems and was very vocal about them, which is the first step of dealing with those problems. And I also think, like, it was a huge factor that he said, okay, in Wolfsburg, we maybe have to cut 20,000 jobs 2030 when we don't really change and do the right thing and operate faster. And I can imagine that that the Workers' Council didn't like that comment, especially, I think. And they really, I can imagine they pressured a lot to get rid of him, because somebody is thinking about cutting 20,000 jobs. But it's more or less realistic. You have to think about it. If the processes change so much and the complexity of producing the car gets reduced, what happens? Should you pay the workers just standing around? I mean, it is a critical, especially in Germany, it's a critical topic to talk about cutting jobs. In Germany, that's not like in the US, where you just, Elon Musk can run into the company and say, you're fired, more or less. And you can't do that in Germany. Your job is very secure here because of our regulations, which has benefits for the workers, but disadvantages sometimes if you want to be more flexible. But times change, and that's how I see it. So really, I was shocked, especially because Blume was so vocal about e-fuels.
Yeah. So maybe we start with talking about the positives about these instead of the negatives, which
we can do that.
I'm very vocal about that. So maybe we should turn this a little bit around, because there's a lot of positives about these. And I think now, since he's gone, we should really not forget that. So one thing you said already is he had a leadership style and attitude in terms of setting goals, long-term goals, where VW Group needs to go to, which is one of the reasons why he was appointed. Let's not forget, VW Group was kind of 100% ICE vehicles a few years ago.
Yeah.
And when these came, he said, we need to change course, and we need to change 180%. I mean, we need to really turn this big tanker around completely. And everybody said, yeah, you're right, because Tesla is successful. And this is, over the years, more and more people agreed to that. But they didn't want to live through the pain to do that. So now they called Diess guilty for not achieving a lot of things. But the truth is, and I really would like to stress that, the truth is, the failures that VW is not where they're supposed to be is not Diess alone. It's mainly a few hundred up to 1,000 top managers within VW Group who've been almost sabotaging a few of his activities, or let's say who made a lot of mistakes in trying to implement what Diess was looking for. And obviously, no manager will ever accept that he or she did a mistake. So it's always another person who's guilty. And now it's the overall CEO. So Diess was given a very clear direction, and I think we should appreciate that, because that's was needed. And I also believe it's needed to shock the people inside.
Yeah.
To give them examples with Tesla and Elon Musk, what they do, and to give them an example in terms of, look, if they can do that, why can't we?
It's like a wake-up call, like a slap.
Yeah. Yes, it's a slap in the face. it's not really accepted in the German culture.
Yes.
As you may
Failure
confirm.
culture. Yeah, we have a bad failure culture.
It's more a US kind of culture in terms of we suck, our company sucks, and if we don't turn around, we go bankrupt. So move your asses. But it's today more required than even in the past. And with Blume, as much as I appreciate his career and what everything he has done, there is, in my opinion, a very, very high risk that VW Group is falling back in the old behavior in terms of ICE age. So I see this already coming. So it's like, yeah, we tried with Herbert Diess to do battery electric vehicles, and we definitely will continue to do that. But, we should do it in a different way. And why should we do it that fast? And we will sell ICE vehicles anyway in the third world, in South America and Africa, and you name it. So let's be a little bit more flexible here, blah, blah, blah. So I think that Herbert Diess was someone who was not pleasantly received. And a person like him is needed to make this tanker change direction. So this is about the positives around Diess. In terms of the negatives, you said it already. He always had a good leadership in vision talk, in particular in public, so in interviews, and that's why everybody liked him outside of VW.
But not inside.
He's totally incapable, and that's also part of the truth, to implement it. If you take Elon Musk as an example, and that's a totally unfair example because someone like Elon Musk has probably shown up one time in a century. Who has a vision, who understands what's going to happen the day after tomorrow when we all are still sleeping and don't see what's coming, number one, and who has the technical capabilities to implement this vision up to the point where he's arguing with the engineers what needs to be done on a micro level. And this shit even works, So Herbert Diess was grown up as in a leadership vision talk CEO German culture role, never prepared for implementing how batteries should work or how software should work. He just didn't learn that way. And I don't see any CEO in the entire industry who is anywhere near of that what Elon Musk is doing. So if we criticize Diess, and I'm probably the first one who's criticizing him, you always have to be very careful that we just don't compare to the impossible Elon Musk, who's achieving what nobody is able to. On the other side of the coin, and we all see that there's just no time left. And I see that they are probably going slower forward now. I don't think the urgency Herbert Diess put out there is going to continue like we've seen them. There is just like yesterday, first strategic statements came out that Blume is a new CEO. First of all, he's doing now 2 jobs, which is not a problem because Elon Musk is probably doing 10 jobs simultaneously, but he is a very different character. And Blume was all the time only in one role for decades now within VW. He's I think 30 years he worked for VW, if I'm not mistaken. So he knows the organization inside out, which in my opinion is a disadvantage.
Because he falls back to the old ways easily and
exactly. So he has this established network, and some people may say because he has this established network, he will be able to turn the ship around. But as you indicated already, Blume is coming in with a mindset of hybrids are not that bad and e-fuels are not that bad, and that's really pretty foolish because if you just look at the facts in terms of e-fuels, driving the same distance with e-fuels, you need 6 times the energy. 6 times.
Yeah, because you have to produce it. Even if you use renewables, you could use that electricity directly into batteries. Why should you?
And we don't have the renewable electricity to power the, to split water into hydrogen and oxygen and go from there. And without hydrogen, you never will have e-fuels. And at the end of the day, you emit what you previously tried to save in terms of CO2. So totally stupid idea. And everybody who's factual oriented or agrees to that, but Blume is coming with this idea for Porsche. I don't know to what extent he will implement this for VW Group, but Blume said before already and that's not long ago, that's beginning of this year, he said, well, we have 1 billion cars driving around here. Why shouldn't we take the infrastructure that's already in place? And he talked about e-fuels in that respect. So, and you can't produce it, as you said, without renewable energy. It doesn't make any sense. There's just a study came out that you pollute about 18% more with e-fuels if you use the energy mix we have right now in Germany. So yes, you can claim we are going to change that, and one day we will be 100% renewables, all true. But still, if you achieve that, you just emit what we emit today in terms of CO2. So what is the achievement? There is none. So I think it's pretty astonishing for me that someone who's obviously not rooted in facts, it's not listened to science, is promoted to the group CEO of VW. So that's a shocking news. And the next one is, and this nobody talked about that, and actually I didn't even talk in my last article for my patrons about that, because Blume can't do both jobs, CEO of Porsche and CEO of VW Group, but he doesn't want to be not the CEO of Porsche, so he's going to continue that. The CFO of VW Group is going to be promoted to the COO of VW Group now, and he should take the majority of the work from Blume. So, and here it comes. Each time you put a CFO in a role of an organization, you have someone who is usually normally, and there are exceptions like with Tesla, normally CFOs are not, they don't understand technology a lot. They understand numbers and balance sheets very much. So they try to optimize the balance sheet to please shareholders, and that's their job. I've never seen in that industry a CFO promoted into a COO role who really understood technology. So I'm just making the prediction here that the setup within the VW Group is not the best one. I'm not saying that it was the best one with Diess for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is that I've been criticizing all the time, and I repeat myself, that you have to have someone on board level who's responsible for software and software alone, and who has really decision power. And that doesn't exist within VW. That guy has been kicked out before, which shows me that they still have not understood that most of the profit and most of the attractiveness of vehicles will come out of the software in the future.
Yeah, I have to add something there, because if you look at the software issue, you could tell that Diess made a mistake when he said, we're gonna hire 1,000 programmers to solve our problems. That's never a good idea. If you look at software development, it's not a factory. You don't hire as many people as you can. It's about the quality of people. You need industry experts, and maybe you need 15 of them max. If you have a team larger than 15 programmers, it can fall apart. It depends on the task. If you want to, for example, Tesla also employs hundreds of programmers, but for labeling and figuring out the labeling algorithm, and people work on different smaller projects, more or less, inside of the bigger software thing. But you have a smaller team who's responsible for the interface, for example, and for the user experience and everything. And that's very important. And when you hear something from Cariad, which is a total mess and a total disaster, you cannot say it differently. I think this also stems from the German decision to tax these startups in the 90s, that they just said, okay, we are making a huge bet here with all that software development. We're going to leave to Silicon Valley. Goodbye, peace out, we're out. And yeah, it shows the infrastructure in Germany. We haven't woken up. I mean, for example, fiber cables for the internet connection was decided in the 80s by Kohl, more or less, that we don't have them now, because he said, no, just use copper. Yeah, and guess what South Korea did? They didn't invest in copper, they invested in fiber. And now you look at the infrastructure there compared to us, and even in the Europe comparison, we are lagging behind with the digitalization. That's why I think that's a huge factor that's still ingrained in every company we have. It's very difficult to be as innovative as the American companies in that regard with software development. We have good software developer. I won't discredit that, but still, I think that was a huge mistake that Germany wanted to tax right away as fast as they could, instead of just leaving the companies a little bit alone to catch up to figure stuff out and stuff like that. But
I think some of the automotive managers already accepted that and understood that and talked about it, that they underestimated the challenge around vehicle software. If you just look around, I mean, BMW is not better, Mercedes-Benz is not better. And every brand in VW is horrifying. We have this recalls all the time. We have this only very on a limited scale possibility with over-the-air updates.
Exactly. That's so funny.
It's the state of the art. I mean, every customer is expecting that, and it doesn't work. We have all Taycans from Porsche have been recalled, not one time, but more than one time because of software issues. So there's a lot of myth around in terms of we have a great BEV, our e-tron is great, our Taycan is great, our IDs are great. Yes, they are improving. I think they are learning. It's not that they don't understand that a lot doesn't work right now, but they are just not fast enough. So the pace of innovation is lagging behind big time. And I'm not talking in that respect only about Tesla, but also about the Asian, particularly the Chinese automakers, which are coming to Europe now.
They understood,
the competition is going to be more Asian automakers, in my opinion. I mean, Tesla, you can't compete with them. Sounds strange, but I don't see anybody in particular, not as I expect that full self-driving is going to be implemented next year, maybe if things go really bad the year after next year, so 2024. But people have no bloody clue what that means. I mean, they have no understanding that an entire generation will say, gosh, I'm not going to buy a car for myself. If I have enough money, I'm going to buy one of these Teslas and I'm going to rent it to other people so I don't have to work anymore. That's one thing that's happening. And other people will just take it as a taxi, as a robotaxi, and all the money is going to accumulate on the side of Tesla. Later, at that point in time, they will understand this is a technology organization, and the margin will jump from now 40% above 80%. So just think about it, 80% plus in the automotive industry. Nobody will buy. I mean, why should you buy any other brand at that moment in time? And the pressure will be tremendous because I don't see any other company out there developing really a solution in terms of full self-driving that will work like Tesla will work. I mean, they are going to have solutions, Waymo and others, in geofenced regions and cities here and there, but this is a small scale. And if you want to go to your grandma over the weekend and this is 30 kilometers drive outside the city, you can't use a Waymo anymore. You're going to use a Tesla. And this is going to be the majority of the use cases. So it's unbelievable that the market doesn't understand what's coming here. It's a totally paradigm shift, and it's going to blow all the automakers against the wall. So I'm seeing big things happening in the years to come here.
Do you see, when we talk about full self-driving, I was wondering that because I've covered that on my channel as well with the video, with the competition forecast. I have a small segment where I just talk about the big news coming from the German automotive companies. And the level 3 autonomy, like Mercedes cracked it, and it was such a great news. And I've looked at the tests and I was puzzled. Like, okay, only on highways, only behind a vehicle driving about 35 miles per hour, for example. And if it's faster, then it just stops. Yes, but you can read the newspaper legally or stuff like that. That's the big improvement. And even I was laughing so hard because the air conditioning runs on auto at full speed, which is mandatory because the lawmakers thought, yeah, what if the windows get fogged? So we have to, how about we put a sensor on the windshield or something like that? Maybe think about something like that. Do you think that this was lobbied by Mercedes with the lawmaker to shield their market in that regard? Because they say, okay, now Tesla has to comply with this ridiculous regulations. And do you think they are trying to put rules in place that only they can deliver? And the worst thing would be to say, oh, LiDAR is mandatory now, something like that, which would crush like all the Teslas, and you have to put LiDAR in, and they won't do that, I don't think. And what do you think about that?
So because most of the German automakers don't understand software as such, and you just described it in terms of how development is happening, and that you better have a great team of 30 people who are really bright than having a team of 300 or even 3,000. That describes that they have no clue about software, but they even have less understanding of artificial intelligence and self-learning algorithms. And if you dig a little bit deeper into that, and you know that Tesla is working with vector space and even adding a time component with the videos, which allows the vehicle to make predictions. So predictive artificial intelligence is kind of the holy grail.
It's real life vision. It's actually real life vision. You could put that technology in everything nearly,
exactly,
because you solved vision. It's crazy.
Exactly. So this is if you think about what such a vehicle or such a robot can do, is so different from any other development approach in the market. Take Mobileye, take Waymo, take you name it. They just don't have these capabilities because they don't have the data to train the systems on the scale Tesla can, in addition to the Jojo computer. So they don't understand software, they don't understand artificial intelligence. Therefore, they just don't see it coming. There's a train coming in that direction, and they don't see it, and that train is Tesla. So to answer your question, is this kind of an initiated lobbying activity with it? And we talk here about, just for the audience, we talk about a specific German autonomous vehicles law that has been initiated in Germany, nowhere else, and has nothing to do with UNECE, and is not regulated like the regulation we know from full self-driving better in the US. So a different way of approaching autonomous vehicles. Actually designed very much for people mover, from a parking lot of a concert to the entrance. This kind of small buses going back and forth. And they have to have, by the way, if there's no driver in the seat, they have to have a supervision. Not sure if you know that. So someone sitting in an office, having a screen, seeing the car driving, so that he can interfere if something is happening. In other words, that cars can only work where you have 5G internet connection. Therefore,
welcome to Germany.
Exactly. So places in Germany extremely limited. Then there's a regulation that communities can approve or disapprove this technology. So it goes down to the lowest level of decision making in Germany. And I could continue. But the point here is this law has been partly written from lobby groups. It's totally normal in Germany and in other countries too. We all should demonstrate every weekend against that, but it's happening all the time. Why? Because politicians just have no technology understanding, and the people in their team usually neither. So they need someone who understands what the heck they are talking about. Autonomous vehicles and artificial intelligence are a very complex matter, as you all know. So they get offers from the industry saying, hey, we can help you. We have this understanding, and we do it for free. So we can help you. This goes to the point where some of the laws are totally written from that industry, the laws are used for. So obviously, if you work for Daimler and you know that your company is trying to, develop a system like you just described, and you are in charge of helping the politicians to define a law, it's just it's normal that you just write what makes sense for you as a company. Yes, you make it a little bit broader so that other companies can be included. But to answer your question, I don't think this is purposely designed to keep Tesla out.
Okay.
And you just said LiDAR is not a part of the law. If that would have been a part, I would have said, okay, this is going a step too far.
Okay.
But here, I think this is more or less a lobby activity in the usual boundaries of Germany. I still find this approach totally unacceptable because obviously Mercedes-Benz is running around like claiming we are the only one, which is actually true with level 3. And the interesting part is here that Tesla is saying, who cares, right? So they throw all the resources behind full self-driving better. They're trying to get full self-driving better implemented in Europe as a test system, like in the US. And they approach this from the objectives they have. And the objective is to have a system that will work in all conditions regardless.
No connection, for example, no internet connection, it still drives. Because it's pretty advanced stuff and very thought through in every detail. Like okay, we have no connection. What do we do? What does the car do? It's
exactly. So, and what people also underestimate is I mean, we have now, what is it, 3 million, 2 million? I don't recall how many Teslas are on the road right now, which all are equipped with the technology once full self-driving is ready. And that is totally not understood from the market at all. They rather talk about the cameras that violate German regulation here and there, and that this would be a problem. And then you have all the cases people are claiming that autopilot is not working. But what I'd like to say is that the approach Mercedes-Benz is doing here is the level 3, which is there's a handover from the driver to the vehicle and back in specific situations. So it's a traffic jam assist. It's nothing more than that. And it can drive up to, as you said, 35 miles per hour or 60 kilometers on an autobahn where you have a traffic jam and nowhere else. So I don't think even it does lane changes. I don't think it does.
And no, it does not do lane changes, which is not prohibited right now, I think. And also not in tunnels, not at rain, not at low standing sun, not at a construction site, etc., etc. Yeah.
And if you know Germany and all the construction sites we have here, you know that there's probably can count the places in one hand where you can use the system. But
maybe in Stuttgart, just at the area of Mercedes.
Yes, but Mercedes-Benz is calling big victory.
Yeah.
And they are not wrong. I mean, it's the only company that has level 3 partly autonomous vehicles on the road here in Germany at the moment.
Yeah.
Except of a couple of pilots and other things. So that's all fine. But the public is totally misguided by that and kind of getting this impression Mercedes-Benz is ahead. The same is actually true for their 1,000 kilometer trips with this car, with QXX, where they claim that the car is, the only one and that has this range. So it's influenced by lobby groups, that law, but it doesn't mean a lot because Tesla doesn't care about level 3. Their system is, you have autopilot, which is level 2, where you have this handover, but you initiate it and you are responsible as a driver, period. Why should you do level 3? It doesn't make a lot of sense. The more attractive value prop is level 4, even level 5. So therefore, Tesla is focusing on that. If you go into level 3, you have this experience, every Mercedes-Benz, and actually this is just S-Class, which I think didn't mention yet.
Mm-mm.
So you can have this autopilot, also this ProPilot system only on the S-Class of Mercedes-Benz, which is very expensive because only very few people buy it, and only a small fraction of those take that solution anyway. So Tesla doesn't care; they just go into level 4, and I think it's the right approach, because with level 3, you're going to have a lot of either disappointed customers who use it with the experience you just described, or a lot of issues with the court and lawsuits, because people feel like there was an accident and Mercedes is claiming it was your responsibility at the time because there was a takeover and you didn't do it fast enough, and the driver is saying no, I gave it over, and then you have this unpleasant news that nobody wants. And what is really the added value you have here? I mean, if you think about it, it's extremely limited. So I fully understand that Tesla is not going that direction. And I'm just hoping, not knock on wood, that they get an open ear from the UNSCE to start, a fleet of pilots in Europe in terms of full self-driving better. That would be awesome.
Yeah, to end this full self-driving topic, if you visit the US, for example, and you see, okay, Tesla has full self-driving on every street, autonomous vehicles. You can call a Tesla to pick you up at the airport. It drives you to your hotel, and then it just drives off without a driver. And if you experience that, and also in China, because I think they are also more or less open to the ideas of full self-driving. In the case of cybersecurity, they are a little bit skeptical with Tesla, that Tesla is spying on the Chinese government or something like that. So they're very paranoid about that. So no military bases, no critical infrastructure that is has to be hidden there. But I still think in cities, in bigger cities, I think they will get some kind of approval there. And if you start to see that globally and see, okay, they have the solution, and then we drive around with our S-classes here in Germany, the small fraction of people, and the usability kind of sucks more or less, and gaming is also not a huge deal because in the video I've watched, it was so ridiculous, I have to mention that the person started to play Tetris and yeah, it was stuttering so hard to start, and you could really see that nothing is optimized. It's just like the interface, they click, and then the interface turns, makes a turn. Even that movement is strange for me, because if you know user interface design from the mobile phone, you really know that it's so outdated how they design their software, also with the 3D shadows and everything. They want to simulate the 3D button. So they think, yes, the demographic doesn't understand buttons if they are flat designed. What is happening and stuff like that. And I just wanted to add that like the entertainment is the next thing that they have to tackle. And they won't make it with their cars who are underperforming as much, because they lack the performance. So crazy, even the hardware. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, going back to VW Group, this is something Herbert Diess was pushing big time, that he doesn't want to give the data to the big tech companies in the US, in particular Google and others. Therefore, they need to crack this on their own in terms of operating system, which I believe is the right approach. I mean, they understood that in the future, the majority of value will go into the data and software of vehicles. And if VW is not able to crack that, they're going to shrink to an unknown. I mean, think about it. In the first 4 months of this year, VW is number 15 in China. So
yeah.
There was a time when German automakers together in China had a market share of 70%, 70. So now they are just a footnote. So, and and this is they just shrunk from 25% last year to 17% this year. This includes all ICE vehicles, and with BEVs, they are not catching up as needed. So if you listen to the headlines in the news, everything is fine. I mean, they have fantastic profits, and which is true, and they have a great margin, which is also true. But if you look at registration numbers, they're going down, down, down. And we have to ask ourselves, how long will people be willing to pay them the extra on top of a car just to get it faster or to get it at all? Sooner or later, and we see it, I believe, happening soon, some of the supply issues will easing and prices going down. And then these companies are in a situation where they start from a low unit volume sales.
Yeah.
And have to lower prices to still sell the cars. So that's dramatic, and obviously nobody talks about that. Just to give an example, how bad the situation is. Porsche had a retreat in BEV sales last year, first half last year to this year, first 6 months of 2022, by 5%. So they've been selling less Taycans than last year. And the next BEV they are trying to bring to market is going to be the Macan, which is going to be launched the year after next year, 2024. So we talk about quite some time to wait for bringing a new model out there. And I'm asking myself, if you brought, I mean, again, Porsche is claiming great profits and margins, which is all true, but the setup for the future is totally screwed. And I don't understand how anybody in the supervisory board can promote a person that brings Porsche in such a situation. So, I mean, ask yourself why Blume is pushing so much for the Porsche IPO. They're trying to sell.
They want to separate from VW.
If they wait longer, what I just said will become more and more obvious for the market. They can't produce ICE vehicles in their core markets anymore because, how it is in Europe, no ICE vehicles in 2035. In the US, we will see a similar situation simply because nobody wants to buy them anymore. So the 911 will fall down the cliff sooner or later, if you like it or not. So what is left? Hybrids, e-fuels, and then a few BEVs. I mean, it's still a great car, the Taycan. I'm not talking negative about it. It's a fantastic car to drive, but it won't support Porsche in the scale of revenue they need. So, and seeing VW Group supervisory board making a decision to hire Blume, that person who brought this company in that situation, as the overall CEO, is creating a lot of question marks on my side. And I don't see that this is positioning for a better future. I would have loved to see some software-driven CEO from the industry who's really steering this all up and being very unpleasant to a lot of top managers in terms of what he wants to initiate it within VW Group, with a very strong focus on Cariad / on battery development.
Yeah.
So these two things going to be key for the future. And VW Group did the right thing in trying to initiate Trinity and Artemis, these two projects from Audi and VW, which is the next generation IT architecture, operating system, and vehicles. I think they promised too much. They also promised autonomous driving, which I don't see they are going to achieve anytime. Maybe not as long as the two of us are living. I don't know. I still believe it's a better idea to think about subscribing what Tesla develops later on. Much better idea. To be competitive. Still a big portion of the profits will go into the hands of Tesla, but VW would be able to survive. To be able to do that, they have to have the vehicles who support that. So you have to have somehow the cameras, and you have to have the IT architecture, and you name it, which I hope will come with Trinity and Artemis. So we will see. But the decisions they've been doing now with Blume is creating more question marks on my side than ever. I don't see that that there's any direction. Blume has said and indicated, sources say that he wants to put more responsibilities more on the brands. So this is before it was more centralized approach, like we want to have one unified battery cell for all of the VW group. 90% of the vehicles should have this unified battery cell. Right now, I think they have 20 plus different designs of batteries within the VW group. If you give more power back to the brands, guess what? You are not going to have 20, you're probably going to have 30 or 40 different kinds of battery cells within the VW group vehicles in the future, which is not necessarily bad because these cars have different objectives, purposes, customers, you name it.
Or else you have a situation like BMW, for example, where they just put out the gas car and the electric vehicle, and you don't have a frunk, for example, because it's designed that like a car with an engine.
So exactly.
Something
so
like that.
There's a problem is in a different level because BMW is still producing hybrids, ICE vehicles, and battery electric vehicles on the same platform, which is creating the same design. So you have all the disadvantages in a battery electric vehicle.
Yeah, the weight and everything. It's not
an ICE
optimized.
car.
Yeah.
And just one of the caveats you mentioned is a frunk that doesn't exist, which is stupid because for me and many other people who have just enjoyed a frunk one time will never
want to
buy
go
a
back
car without one.
Yeah.
For very clear reasons. The practicability is just unbeatable. So in particular, if you go long distance and have a lot of luggage, you just can store the cable in front and charging is easy and other things. So I'm just very curious how VW will do this in the future. Right now, they are setting up for increasing cost because giving more power to the brands is going to be different developments in the brands. We will see where this goes to. Blume wants to continue the job with Cariad. I think they just don't have another choice anyway. But it looks like Audi and Porsche will go a different path. So then they're gonna have 3 different operating systems in-house. And this complicates a lot. It doesn't reduce costs, it increases costs. And margin will in the future be one of the big problems because the transformation is very expensive. And again, I'm asking why is VW Group is doing an IPO with Porsche, which is now, by the way, valued in the beginning worth 80 billion. Now they're going back to 60 billion, which is totally ridiculous if you think about it. What was it? I think 12.5% of the shares are going to be sold and not more. So, but if you understand the political situation with the Porsche and Piech families, and with VW not having enough money, and Porsche and Piech family wanted to have more influence on Porsche as a company, they're going to buy another 12.5%, so 25% goes out there, it's going to be sold. 12.5% is bought by Porsche and Piech families, which have now a stronger say in Porsche, which is their stepchild, which has always been their focus. They've been making successful. I mean, this is a history, right? So it started with that. So for VW Group, it's good because they get cash into the bank and they urgently need cash in order to pay for the transformation. And having now the Porsche CEO in that role of a VW Group CEO is putting the last questions to the rest, whether that IPO is ever going to happen. Interestingly, the last press release from Porsche didn't even mention the IPO. So banks are on the road right now to evaluate what a fair price for the stake they want to IPO is out there in the market. And I also read that a lot of investment bankers have big question marks if it's meaningful right now, that market situation we are in, to do an IPO. Actually, everybody pulled back from IPO right now. There's no market for an IPO, actually. It's just only Porsche who's trying to push this through somehow. We will see. I mean, and that also explains, by the way, the eagerness from Porsche to push profits and margin, because this is usually how you calculate share value. This is how market is always calculating share value. So they don't look at units sold. They just look at what is the profit per vehicle and what is the expected vehicle count in the future, which is always a debate how it will look like, and then you end up with evaluations. We will see.
Yeah, I also think the topic of the luxury segment is very interesting, because all the German brands, I mean, Tesla, the secret master plan was released by Elon Musk around 2008. Sell luxury vehicles, with that margin finance the mass producing vehicles, and that's what they start to do. That's in my eye what they start to do. So they are making the steps that Tesla did 2008 now. And what I realized is also with the software and everything, they're just at the beginning, and it looks like they just started making EVs. And you could see the VWs, the ID3s, and the e-Golf before that was just like trial and error testing, more or less. But they try to already push that into the market. And so they took long time to learn, because they are not as agile as Tesla in learning things and implementing fast, because they are not like don't have this American DNA of agility. And especially Tesla or Elon Musk as a CEO, he's a Silicon Valley guy, hardcore Silicon Valley development guy, who's a programmer himself, who understands the topic, who invented PayPal together with Peter Thiel, and this is his background. And then he comes, and he also is a hardcore engineer at the same time, so he knows both sides. He knows the hardware, he knows the software, and that's such a huge advantage, because he can look through the bullshit. If people come to him and show him their results, and he looks at them and he's like, wait a second, who are you fooling? That's stupid what you did. We have to change it right now. And at VW, maybe it's you can like maybe look at this das trick. It already they just show something and they say that's okay, because they don't really know something about the thing they're looking at, more or less, and they just wait until the earnings reports come in, or the reports come in. Then they look at the reports and say, oh my God, that was a mistake, but it's too late already. It's implemented. It's and also their production cycles, the budget cycles. I mean, Joe Justice and I talked about that you try to lower the the budget cycles as fast as possible to shorten it. That cash is just available for developing fast and to change direction when you can. And I also analyzed the whole topic, and I realized that it is also a huge culture thing, that in German culture, we are like hierarchical at the same time, but also very egalitarian. So we want a group vote, more or less, on everything. And it's very important to please everybody, more or less. And you don't stick your head out like the American CEOs do, for example. But even the Americans are very egalitarian, but also in decision making. But the difference there is they have this cultural rule almost. They say, divided we fall, united we win, or something like that. That's their premise. So they really listen to the CEO. If the CEO does a final decision, which is more or less in the process pretty late, because he decides early, but that's not a real decision. They change, they test, they look, but the hardcore decision is made by the CEO, and then they say, okay, throw the egalitarian side away, and you just decide, okay, we're gonna do it like that. So they want to stay lean and agile and fast. That's some kind of this pioneer spirit that the Americans have, which is a little bit different from German culture in that regard.
So I think you touched an important point here. I mean, in terms of all the Tesla employees I talked to, they repeated one thing all the same, which is we have a no bullshit policy. So if somebody finds you talking bullshit in a meeting, you have a problem. And that's some say, okay, Elon fired this person and fired that person, which is probably true, because people talking bullshit. In Germany, if you talk bullshit, they say, okay, you talk bullshit, but whatever. So yes, you lose reputation, but you remain in the company. And this has implications. If you stop this bullshit, you just achieve a much faster iteration curve in terms of achieving an objective, because nobody dares anymore to talk bullshit. If people see other people go away by talking bullshit, you have this culture implemented in the DNA of a company. And this is what we see with VW, with BMW, and with Mercedes-Benz. There's a lot, and I've been with meetings with them in my business life. And I worked 20 years about for US software companies where bullshit was never accepted. Yes, you can play hide and seek to a certain extent, but don't try it within Tesla. You're just not going to live very long. And so either you have something to contribute, then do it. If not, go out of the meeting room. What the heck are you doing here? And that is why Elon, for instance, pulling line workers, totally normal employees, from the line into a management meeting and put them on the whiteboard, and they explain to the managers what's going wrong, because they know that will never happen in Germany. Never. I mean, that is just totally unacceptable in Germany as in terms of culture. And this changes need to happen. This is why I've been laughing when VW was explaining one day that the compliance process to change the culture within VW has ended because he finalized the cultural change after the the cheating, device scandal boiled up. That was
Dieselgate, yeah.
5 years later or so. The person who was responsible for compliance was gone, and they declared this is finished, and I was laughing my ass off, because you can't you're never finished with culture, and organization of that change, of that size, and of that mistakes what they did in the past, has a huge task. And to be honest, I have big doubts if you can change such a company at all. That's why I'm saying all the time, and I repeat here, I've saying this years ago, that the VW Group should start a small company,
Yeah.
equipped with some billions, and put some smart, hopefully outside top managers in there, which you can't fire, like in a normal situation from the top down, and which can pull resources out of the VW groups. They find the right people. So creating a situation where they are protected to a certain extent, but still can benefit from the VW group in terms of growing and developing and designing their own solutions. And that is the only setup that I see as a potential successful approach. By doing that, you initiate a new culture, because there's nobody interfering from VW Group, from the top management there. Of course, they will never do that, because if this team is going to be successful and grow successfully, they're going to dethrone the big board of VW Group. So it's like you're firing yourself on the long run, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying the bonus and malus system in these companies needs to be changed completely in order to achieve really what they want to achieve. Right now, we see hide and seek in terms of showing profits, which are bubbles.
Yeah.
They have nice colors, but they're going to plop one day. And on the long run, the German automotive industry, the worst is still to come. It's not looking good.
Yeah. And especially like this topic is very important, because that's why I thought Herbert Diess was so strong in that regard, because you need a strong direction, you need a strong vision, and that's what they don't get. It's not enough that you just save your ass all the time. Well, more or less that's what they do. And politics is the worst thing you can implement, like in that scale. For example, the competition inside of the company. That's such a thing from the 80s or something. That's a management style from the 80s, that you say, okay, you gotta get up to the ladder and pull everybody down on your side to get ahead. But the problem is with that is you have such a, if you nurture this culture of competition all the time, then people start to manipulate, people start to lie, people start to skew information to their benefit because they want to look good to get ahead. And I've talked with Farzad, for example, about this topic in the interview I've conducted with him a few months ago. And he totally said he never witnessed this kind of competition, and he saw some people doing this politics stuff at Tesla, but they were gone very fast. Guess what? They were fired. And they just fire them because this creates huge problems, because the first thing that is incentivized when you read the anti-handbook that an employee gets when he starts, he reads the first thing is, we are Tesla, innovation is key for us, more or less. It's like the big pillar is innovation and getting rid of bottlenecks. That's ingrained in the company culture. The first contact you have with the company is innovation is key. Everything else doesn't more or less matter. It's important that you remove bottlenecks, even if you help another team to remove bottlenecks. And it doesn't matter. You can talk with everybody. Communication is free and open. And of course, don't waste Elon Musk's time. Don't ask stupid stuff, but you technically can send him an email and make him and say, here's a huge problem which gonna unfold. We got to tackle this. I don't know how, and I don't have the resources. And then they work something out very fast. And if you look at the compliance handbook from VW, I've analyzed it. It's over 50 pages, more or less, some drawings and illustrations, half of it, so 25 pages around with information. And you can really see it's like, yes, we're VW, very open and cool company to work for. And then they start. Don't talk directly to a manager. Talk to your supervisor. Don't step out of line. Don't talk to the press. Don't. And the funniest thing is you also have a small segment at the end where you can write some notes. So they also have notes. So you could, because it's such a huge thing, you have to write notes, and you go through that with HR for 1.5 weeks or something like that. And it's just like, talking about the great resign that you've also mentioned in the last interview with the great inner resign. People start to work there and they're like, okay, I don't want to talk too loud, because if I step out of line and talk too loud and be too vocal about stuff, then maybe it's seen as bad. So I won't do that. I'm just doing my job. And I start to turn down my own brain, because if I see something that could improve, I won't be as vocal, because I'm a little bit scared about the situation. And especially in Germany, we have such a bad failure culture, which is like, if you do a mistake, you are replaced or put into another team, or they don't really say, okay, that's good that you made a mistake. In the US, it's like, okay, you made a mistake, you learn from that and you move on, because mistakes are important to develop innovative products. It's as simple as that. Yeah, it's very interesting to see that.
I think culture and the parts of the things you just described are a key component of success for the future. And they're also a key component why they won't catch up to Tesla anytime soon. I just don't see them to catch up, but fall further behind. So they try to accelerate and they certainly improve, but it's slower. And one reason why it's slower is they just have not understood that they have a problem with their culture. And therefore they don't change that. And Blume's appointment is for me a step back in that sense. I would have avoided, regardless how great and brilliant that person is, to appoint someone who has worked for a long time within the VW group. I found it a pretty smart step to pull Herbert Diess in the early days, an outsider, a maverick with a vision, who really made a lot of people angry. And I think this is a positive and not a negative.
Exactly. It's important to change. You have to feel pain for a certain amount of time to understand what the mistakes the whole organization made with their system that they started, because it's a systemic problem that VW has. And yeah.
So therefore, I don't see the required change, and the same is important. The same is true for BMW and for Mercedes-Benz. And therefore, I just can call the situation to get better, despite they are selling more BEVs, which is great. Audi sold now, I think, more than 12% or 15%, even if I remember correctly, which is great. I mean, there's progress there, but the overall numbers are still around 5%. So it's not progress as it's needed to be, and in terms of technology, they are falling further behind, and they still don't have understood what customers are really asking for. So therefore, I'm just as careful and call caution as I've done before. You know this, I know that, a lot of people know that Giga Berlin is ramping quite nicely. Looking at the rumors from today from DPA, it's they're planning for Q1 with 5,000 vehicles a week, which is 250K on an annualized basis run rate. It's half of the phase one, 500,000 per year production number, which I call pretty realistic. So let's say in half a year they achieve 5K. And I would say that they probably need another, let's say, Q3, Q4 next year to achieve 500K around, if everything goes well, which is fantastic. And they are going to sell all of them just like they do today. So it will continue from here. And the problem we have with the German culture and with the German automotive company is going to remain. I don't see this changing.
Yeah.
What was disappointing for me, going back to VW Group, is that the Porsche and PA family brought Herbert Diess in these early days. It was kind of their decision. Herbert Diess was fired because he lost the support from the families. Now they take someone from the old guard to lead the organization. Therefore, I don't know how much time they have. I mean, 3 to 4 years. Let's assume Trinity in our team is really going to be implemented in 2026, 27, which is still a long time. And then they realize at that point in time that they do not have the sales numbers and profits they're looking for. And then they fire Blume, or they're looking for another CEO. And then once again, it starts from zero. So it's a tough situation to be in. I wouldn't choose that job because the forces internally are extremely strong, working against a single person changing that company's right direction.
I have to add something. It shows so much that this process of taking someone from the outside in, and then it starts to develop chaos, and Germans are very orderly, especially in a conservative company like VW, and then they start, oh, he's stirring shit up here. It's just stirring shit all the time, and they see that as a threat, and then they have this autoimmune reaction to like kick. Oh, we need to get that thing away again. Oh, let's take the thing we already have implemented in our body and great, now we're back to zero again. And they had a chance to, it is a chance to pressure everything. And Diess was very right when he said the possibility of removing 20,000 jobs. That's a realistic danger that could happen if they don't change as fast, and eventually they have to let go someday because the industry is changing. And what is the alternative? VW going bankrupt? Just disappearing? Is that a better outcome for more workers even? Because so many third-party suppliers are dependent on VW, for example. But Tesla is ramping up. Maybe the third-party suppliers say, "Oh, great, let's supply Tesla maybe and change our systems to." I can see that the Mittelstand is shifting towards different companies than or Chinese companies or however the market develops. Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
There was a small study from a university in Germany that investigated the suppliers of Tesla.
I've seen it
in Germany, and they figured out that the average supplier in Germany from Giga Berlin is putting kind of 50% more effort and money into R&D compared to all other suppliers. So that shows you that Tesla is carefully picking whom they're working with, and others don't care that much. I mean, they just want to have the material somehow and plug it in so that this works. And as you indicated, the urgency within the German automakers are not even seen, so they don't see the train driving in their direction and the tunnel right now. Therefore, the shit is going to hit the fan sooner or later. We see this. I think we see this in the numbers already right now. And I would call this press releases about, well, revenue has increased by 5% and profit has increased by, I don't know, 30% or 10%. We are the greatest, we are the best. I would call this bullshit. If I would be in a meeting with the top managers and they present these numbers, I would tell them this is total bullshit. And they need to understand why this is bullshit. This is exactly what you said. This is political game in terms of I'm a top manager and I'm successful. No, you're not, because profits are great to have, but what have you done for the long-term success of the organization? You actually did the opposite by increasing prices, selling less vehicles, and you haven't solved the underlying technical issues, and people don't find our BEVs attractive. So how do we survive in the future? So this is really bullshit talk, and nobody is calling them out. So, and that's a big issue. As you said, now they will say, "Oh, cool, now we can relax within VW Group. Everything is better now. We are going back to business as before." No, you're not, because the market has changed. The paradigm of selling vehicles has changed, and it's going to change even faster from here. So there will be a hard awakening in the future. I see a lot of people going to be laid off in a way that they call this again a victory. So they all the time will try to spin this in a direction of this is not that bad and it's still a good thing what we did here.
It's necessary. The industry is changing. When you see it in the long run, change will happen and people eventually will lose their jobs, and then they have to rearrange, and then you have to adapt the situation. It changes all the time, and this automotive space was so conservative or so stable for so long, and now it's disrupted. And disruption doesn't care about feelings, doesn't care about the individual worker at the line. It will happen, the thing, and you have to prepare the company for that and wake up. It's very important to.
We see already what's happening in Asia and China in particular, as well as the USA, North America, in terms of the sales of vehicles from the German automakers. And I'm just looking forward when the good Chinese companies coming over to Europe and selling here vehicles, and people will realize it's a great software, it's a great driving experience. And by the way, the build quality is pretty nice and I like the design. So the switch over. And this is going to happen. And that's going to be a little bit of shock because it's kind of considered the home market. Nobody can do what they can do here. No, it's not. I mean, it's changing dramatically. And as I said, nobody's ringing the bell. So I think it's going to be a hard awakening.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Alex, for this conclusion. I think that sums everything up very well. And I mean, we've seen great examples for that already. That like you mentioned, like VW should make a little startup on the side that gets poured in with money and just starts to develop very autonomously their systems, like Polestar, for example, from Volvo, and they are Chinese owned. So the Chinese already are players in Europe here, and you can see in Polestar they're doing a good product, a luxury vehicle with great materials, great build quality, and also with a little bit better software than a VW, for example. If you look at the ID.3, it's and also the Mercedes, which is a luxury vehicle. The interfaces look, I don't want to say the word, like it's not good. It doesn't look good. But I think we've summed up the episode very well here, and I'm very thankful to have you on. And You got to check out Alex's Patreon. I highly recommend it. He already put new information about all these things, and you can read through it. It's very important to look into that, I would say, and also follow him on Twitter because, it's a great source of information about the German market as well, especially from this lens, to get information about the market, about the transition happening, and also a German perspective on Tesla, which is very interesting because German car brands are still a huge player and we have to look at that. Yeah, so thank you, Alex, for being on the podcast, and we will see us next time. We will talk maybe soon. Yeah, and there's only one thing to say now, which is a goodbye to everybody.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here, and always good talking to you.